I'm Basia Sokolowska, taking you through my creative alphabet. L for Louise Bourgeois is the topic of today's video. Louise Bourgeois, a great French-American artist who worked in the media of sculpture, installation and drawing, also textiles, was a very influential artist, and she also had an impact on my art and my thinking about art and my pretty much understanding of why I make art and what function it plays in my life. Louise Bourgeois based her entire artistic output on her childhood, in particular on one event which she considered very traumatic, which was a love affair that her father had with Louise's young English tutor, and the effect it had on her and her family and her mother and so on. This energy of that event really fueled her entire art practice, and in some ways it's perfectly understandable, considering that Louise Bourgeois belonged to a generation which was very deeply affected by Freud's writings and teaching and the psychoanalysis, the new insight, the new understanding of the human psyche with the subconsciousness as the sort of driving force of creativity, the force that shapes personality, and also looking into childhood as this source of events that have a deep impact on later life. And in that way, I think Louise Bourgeois was very consistent and very loyal to Freud, that in her artworks, in her sculptures and installations and drawings, he talks about her father and her mother and the family home, and expresses her very powerful and very unhappy emotions of fear and jealousy and anger. I picked up 2 fridge magnets at the Louise Bourgeois retrospective in Tate Modern. I'm not a fridge magnet person, but I quite like them. I like them because they are pink and soft and gentle, and Louise Bourgeois' works are often very big and menacing, and there is a sense of violence and discomfort about them. So I thought they indicate a kind of a soft and gentle underbelly of her practice, which is present in her drawings quite often. But what interests us here is the message, I think. One reads art is a guarantee of sanity, so this is something that we could say a motto of Louise Bourgeois art. She said that if she didn't have her art, she would be a very unpleasant person. Well, from what I read, she wasn't a particularly pleasant person anyway, even though she had her art, but it's kind of, could have been worse. And the second one reads, be calm. It's a very gentle, kind of soft way she contained this message on a sort of square of paper or textile. And I think be calm is something that neurotic people tell themselves to kind of stay calm, and to that everything is okay, and that their fear and anxiety is really something that kind of comes up from themselves, and it's not necessarily dependent on the world around them. So I think in that way, I'm not reworking my childhood in my art in the same way as Louise Bourgeois does, but I do work through some traumatic events in my life, like I talked about blood plants and how they were a way of me dealing with my miscarriage. And also quite often retrospectively, after I have done a body of work, I can see how it really came from my experiences, and how in some ways making art is a way of processing certain energies, certain ideas, but probably emotional kind of energies which are sort of deeper down than the level of the thinking mind, and they need to kind of sort of have their own adventure, and they have their adventure in my photography and in my drawings. Um, the drawings behind me come from my adaptation body of work. It was a series of photographs that I took in the UK, in England, in the rhododendron kind of forest. And what I thought at the time, I was dealing with coming and fitting into a new country, a new lifestyle, which was required of me when I moved from Poland to England. But in fact, what I was doing, I was dealing with my father's death and the world without him, to which I needed to adapt in order to function. So the kind of forms of textiles that I tried to suspend or wrap around the rhododendron twigs, they were really a way of me talking about myself in the world without my father, who was such a great source of love and support for me. What I like about Louise Bourgeois' art and the way she talks about her emotions and people in her life is that she doesn't resort to representing them in terms of a likeness or appearance. When she talks about her mother, she makes a huge sculpture of a spider called Maman, and I refer to that in the images that I made in a project dedicated to Louise Bourgeois. When she talks about her father, she makes this kind of sculpture environment using latex, using kind of disturbing organic synthetic forms. And what she does, she really gives us this kind of emotional environment that was connected to her father, which Louise experienced, and dealing with that sculpture, we in turn can experience this sort of mixture of unease and fear and apprehension that Louise associates with her father. So I think that Louise gave me a sense of insight into my own art practice, that my art practice comes from my very particular experiences in life and my personality and kind of emotions that need to be dealt with. And I find it the most appropriate way of dealing with them is through art.